I'm delighted to be joined today by the creative mind behind Song of Ascent, Shlomo Weprin. Shlomo is a screenwriter, director, producer, editor of the film. Is there anything you don't know how to do, Shlomo?
Sing.
I don't think so.
Do you sing?
I sing.
Shlomo,
No, I play music.
you know, okay. Shlomo is a graduate of NYU's Tisch School of the Arts, where he honed his craft in film production. With over 15 years of experience in producing, shooting, and editing a wide range of video content, he's built a reputation for creating engaging projects through his company, Shlomotions. His diverse body of work spans various genres and serves an array of established clients. Currently, Shlomo is venturing into the world of feature films. He's in post-production on his latest project, a film that explores themes related to Israel, well-known musicians, and the transformative power of music to heal and unite. We certainly felt that last night after the film. So thank you for being with us, Shlomo. And right beside me is Stacy Levitt-Wright, CEO of Edmonton Jewish Federation.
I'm actually really excited to hear about that film. We'll save that for the end, but that sounds like something we'll be very curious to see come about. Shlomo, thank you for being with us here today and for evening for you and, not being around all the people who are partying on the streets of Tel Aviv. So thank you for sitting on a Zoom call with us. We really appreciate you making the time to sit down and to talk to us. This film, while mostly about Matisyahu and his journey after October 7th, was also rooted in some experiences and projects that were occurring even before that day. Can you talk to us a little bit about how the film came to be? We were just, discussing that offline, and what the inspiration was behind the projects that inspired the film itself.
Sure. So, I know Matisyahu for about 10 years. I've been working with him, blessed to work with him. A friend of mine became his tour manager, connected us, and I started making all kinds of video content for him. And about 9 years ago, he was here in Israel when I happened to be here, when I first started working with him. And there were stabbings taking place, terrorist stabbings in the heart of Jerusalem at the time. And he was performing a 5,000 person show at Sultan's Pool in the heart of that area. And it became this storyline that we created a 3-minute documentary just showcasing what happened on the trip. And when he came now, when I knew he was coming, it was literally last minute. It was the night before he got here. I saw on social media, we're not in touch every day. And I see, oh, Matisyahu is coming to Israel. I reached out, I'm like, hey, man, would you want me to film whatever you're going to be doing? And he's like, that would be great. So I wasn't really aware of everything that was happening. I wasn't aware there was a music video being shot, but I kind of also hadn't experienced the aftermath of October 7th myself, having been here. And so I went down south and I ended up just filming the entire experience with the cameraman from the Maccabi Task Force, which is the organization that brings out the influencers. When his show started getting, I also had offered to edit the music video because I felt, very talented director Yariv Horovitz had these really emotional ideas of how we're going to show the history of the persecution of the Jews throughout history. And it was this angry rap song. That's its own story, the making of the music video. But I was editing the music video and his show started getting canceled. And someone who saw these news segments, who knows Matisyahu, knows the woman who runs the LA Jewish Film Festival, reached out and said, hey, has anyone been filming what's going on with him? And they said, yeah, this guy Shlomo filmed everything in Israel. And he said, well, what will it take for him to make a feature film of the whole thing, the whole experience in less than 2 months to show at the LA Jewish Film Festival for 400 people? And like I just told you, there's a part of my brain that kind of gets activated when I'm being asked to pull off the impossible. Thank God I've tried it and succeeded a few times. So that was happening again now. And I basically figured out how to make this film in that time frame with the resources I had.
Wow. That's incredible. That's incredible. And it helps explain for me how some of the footage came about or why certain things were longer or shorter, as a result of the amount of time that you actually had. One of our questions, of course, is what were some of the biggest challenges you faced making the film? And is there anything else that you would add to that was, in your face as you were putting this together?
Well, definitely one of the biggest challenges is in the process of that happening, you don't usually make a documentary that features an artist that doesn't have a formal interview with the subject.
Yeah.
I basically, there was a bunch of miracles involved in the making of the film, but one of the bigger ones is that right after October 7th, he had sat down with my good friend, Ami Kozak, a talented musician, now comedian, to talk on his podcast. And it just became a lot about October 7th. So that was content that was very crucial for the film was just really literally his expressions and his feelings directly after. And I was actually staying with Ami when I came to America in that time period frame, and he was editing that podcast. So I was like, wow, this is going to be very helpful. That was the moments in the film where he's saying, I was basically retired in New Jersey, but now that was from that podcast. So that was one way I dealt with that, but also the story of his life. I was editing a music video with his son and shooting a music video with his son, Shlomo, who happened to be the same age he was when he first became interested in Judaism. And I didn't know, I had actually filmed his son's bar mitzvah that same month. And I saw his mother, and his mother had said some comment about how Hamas was enriching themselves at the expense of their people. And I thought, oh, you know what? She's got probably an interesting perspective. And then it just came to me like, what if I had his mother telling his life story to his son, who was the same age he was when he first got inspired to become close to Judaism? So that became like the way we told his life story. A couple extra interviews.
I think that added so much to it, and to really help us understand what he was bringing in his perspective to everything. So I really as a mother, I appreciated that, but also as a Jew, I appreciated that.
But also he's this very authentic individual. Like, so I gotta say, like, there's no one I know that's really truly themselves the way I feel like he is, as opposed to just most people. And just that made it possible to point the camera at him without knowing you're making a film and get that content.
That's I'm glad you raised that. It was something that was occurring to me this morning, how you're able to capture the moment and the essence without interfering with what was going on. And I think it's because he was so genuine that really came across. And that's what made it so uplifting, is feeling his spirituality. So one of the things I wanted to ask you is, you're in these incredibly vulnerable moments. And, I know from being there, that being in the destruction and even just the smells of what you're walking through, et cetera. Were there moments of joy in the filming?
Moments of joy. I actually wasn't there when he got that award. I think that was the powerful moment. Moments of joy. I think that the moment with Shlomo Katz wasn't joy at all, but it was something so powerful that scene actually became the first scene in the movie before there was a movie, because I connected them. I knew them both. They happened to both be prominent Jewish figures, one being a rabbi. And what I didn't know was that in the middle of the blessing of the priest, which is the blessing he gives him in the film, he was notified about October 7th in the midst of his prayer service. He was told by the IDF in that moment, and maybe he channeled that when he saw him and asked to give him this blessing. But the blessing was thought, he said after, he's like, I thought it was going to be like a 15, 30-second blessing. And ended up being like this 3.5 in real time blessing of the priest. And he's the priest, the rabbi. So it became like this, wow, what a powerful moment. I just put the images of the victims over that blessing, posted that. And then very talented musician Mendy Portnoy actually saw that scene and was so inspired that he put a musical accompaniment to the background of it, just completely on his own, without ever being asked. And when it came time to make a film and I needed a composer, I was like, Mendy, you're already the composer. And he's like, I've never done this before. He's a talented musician, but never done like a film. And I was like, you got this, we'll do it together. And that became like a very, spiritual kind of, divine providence type of thing to get him involved. But
Zoom call right now.
Was I'll just mute that. Was the title purely related to the music video, for the song that was being created, or was it related to his blessing for Israel or these, spiritual moments? Can you speak to the title?
The music video, at the end of the music video, a big part of the story is he did come to Israel, and amongst other things is to shoot that video. And in the end of the video, where it gets to this part of positivity, where the events that you see, you can watch it on YouTube, it's not completely in the film, but all the events of horror that occurred throughout the video go in reverse at the end, as if they never happened. So it's like almost like this message of hope was the idea of the director. And the song he's singing is a famous Jewish song that we sing at the Blessing After Meals, Shir Hamalos. And Shir Hamalos means Song of Ascent. So the song was called Ascent, but that became like a very appropriate title for the film, that it's Shir Hamalos in English is Song of Ascent. So I guess that's how.
Yeah, and that's what I was wondering, if it was his blessing or that pulls that together. Thank you. Before I turn it over to some of our guests for questions they have, I just have one or two more questions myself. Did you have any unexpected allies? You know, we've talked about the people who are trying to cancel a show, but any unexpected allies, whether it's individuals or organizations in the making of this film?
Well, I think Michael Rappaport, not necessarily in the making of the film, but I know he stepped up big time for Mattisyahu. David Draymond, another talented musician, definitely got involved in helping him with security during some of these incidents. So that became more, you know, the aftermath of me taking the footage from the news segments. But in terms of the making of the actual film, there was definitely someone who got involved to fund it. That was a big deal. David Katzen, you know, very grateful to him that he made this happen. And Jonathan Boyer definitely was the guy who said, you know, what will it take to make this movie? It was his really vision that no one who had already shot all this content and even thought about. So yeah, I guess those were the real allies that weren't necessarily involved in the making of the film, but helped make it happen.
I'll help the project come to life. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you wanna?
And Hillary,
Yeah, I
I
mean,
gotta give Hillary from the, sorry, I forget her last name right now, but Hillary from the LA Jewish Film Festival. I mean, for her to take a chance on me and just
Absolutely.
not, you know, she was literally like, I need to see something. And I'm like, still working on the last two scenes. I'm like, I haven't watched it. I feel like it was the first time in history that a festival director is watching a film before the director. Cause I'm like, okay, I don't care. Just look at it. I'm doing what I can, you know? So that was surreal for sure.
And when was it shown there? How soon after?
It was, so the shows were being filmed around April, the last shows, and then I got the call somewhat in April, and then June 25th, I believe, was the screening. So literally that's
Still pretty early into things.
also very early into the thing. He came January, which was 2 months later. So a lot of, you know, that's what when we were shooting that music video scene at the Nova site, now you'll see a lot of musicians, Shalom Lemmer, like making meaningful music videos at the Nova site. But then it was like, what are you doing? This is a grave. One of the cinematographers called us in the middle of it and like, you can't do this. And I just give Monticello a lot of credit. He really has a vision and believes in what he's doing. And it ended up being, I think, powerful and positive.
He is very powerful because he's honest and as you said, has integrity. And the site was so raw at that point, whereas now it's really more of a living museum. So he really gave you the feeling and in a very connected, spiritual Jewish way to being present in that moment, in that space. And I think he did it very authentically and you captured it beautifully. Yeah.
I'm going.
You have a question?
I was just
Yeah.
gonna say, from your perspective, I guess, from your experience, we've seen so many celebrities either, you know, as you talked about Michael Rappaport, step up on one side of the conflict or the other. What has been your sort of greatest disappointment in the industry and the professionals in terms of looking at this conflict or looking at other industry professionals and, you know, not speaking out on behalf of the Jewish musicians or actors?
Well, you know, on a personal level for Mattisyahu, he mentioned this at the first Q&A he attended where, you know, his manager quit because he wanted him to take a lyric out of that song. I'll be dancing on your tombstone. And that song was written after the Kanye West tweets, which you see in the film, but never released until, ironically, October 8th was the Kanye West tweets. October 8th, a year later, was the actual day after the massacre where he felt the need to post the lyrics to that song because he felt so inspired. And then actually October 8th, a year later, the actor that saw that post and convinced him to come to Israel, I filmed telling that story. So I feel like nothing's a coincidence, but you know, that the tombstone line was this, it didn't seem that controversial, but he said, it's an angry rap song about anti-Semites, but now about the terrorists, and he doesn't want to take it out because he's angry. What happened on October 7th? It was the day after he's posting it. He's like, no, I'm angry. There's an angry rap song. And he quit over that because he actually called other celebrities for advice. I don't want to name who it was, but someone said, I don't have time to listen to it. Just take it out. Very prominent musician, business manager. So, you know, it was very controversial and he stuck to what he believed in. I was editing the video as the shows were being canceled. So when the first show got canceled, I got nervous. I was like, oh my gosh, like we can't put this out. Footage of the Holocaust in October 7th, like people are going to protest. They're going to be articles written. You remember what America was like right after. And the second show gets canceled even more so. I'm like, I don't care how much work I'm doing. He's a friend. I don't want him to be penalized in this way for helping the Jewish people. And then the third show gets canceled. And I'm still editing it, and my brain does like a 180. I'm like, we have to put this out. This is crazy. Like this is a Jewish artist who believes in Israel's right to exist. He's having his livelihood threatened. Once we did, there was literally no backlash, no articles. And for me, it was such a strong personal lesson to know. A second we stand up for what we believe in, and we're truly who we are and who we should be, the world backs away. All those haters with this irrational mentality of what they're doing, they all back away. And and to me, anyone who can see that and steps up for the Jewish people right now, they'll see that same lesson too, I believe.
I, it gives me chills. It's such an inspiring comment and so true. And I think our young people, especially those who were there last night and the people who are on campus, need to see that and hear that and have that emulated. So thank you for taking that risk and doing that 180. Absolutely. I know some people wanted to ask some questions, so I will just let you kind of pipe in. I know Becky wanted one first, so I'll just let you kind of step up and take it from there.
Yeah. So hi, Shlomo. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. So you answered this a little bit. You touched on it a little bit with talking about how you included the cancellation of the shows, but I think I'd love to hear more about when you're going through this organic process, this organic creative process, right? It's not all sort of like laid out. Things are happening as you're making this. Can you talk a little bit more about how that may have either crystallized or shifted what you all as a team saw as the purpose of the documentary from when you began that process to where it ended up?
I think the purpose of the documentary was to show his experiences, because it was, in a way to show what happened, the way he experienced it, and also show how, wrong it was, that what was happening to him, which was, already being featured in these news segments. And then to show his hope and positivity as he gained like strength and hope from the resilience of the Israeli people that he saw when he came back, especially when he got that award, when he was able to bring those Nova survivors back on stage and really sing Am Yisrael Chai. Like that was such a powerful moment. And so it's the challenge for me more than anything was figuring out how to connect the musical moments to the scenes, because as he said, those songs had no meaning. But in terms of the actual film and what it was supposed to be, I feel like it just happened. It happened the way it happened, and we showed it what happened the way it was, and also just maybe incorporating his life story in that scene. Okay, we got to give context to the viewer. Who is this person? Why is he important for the Jewish people? So those were the only two elements I'd say where it required like crafting and figuring out how to structure it, where everything else was real linear almost. This happened and we're going to show it. Yeah. And I think it's a story that needs to be told, is what is kind of, I think, the idea behind it. And that's kind of what it ended up being, I think. Even the introduction to the music video, I was experiencing it as you see it in the film. We show what it was later on, but I was suddenly, it was like, we're shooting this music video. Can we shoot it in this house? I was like, what is this video? So you're seeing it as I saw it in a way. And yeah, it's very organic film.
That's the creative process, right? So that's really interesting. As someone who just saw the film last night, it's really interesting to hear that, one of the challenges was getting those right music moments, because that struck me as just so perfectly coordinated throughout. So I'm surprised to hear that was challenging, because it looked just absolutely seamless, like it was meant to be.
Thank you. Yeah, there's this glass window right in front of me, and I just wrote in dry erase marker like all the musical moments, scenes, and tried to like figure out how we connect one to the other. But he directly connects a lot of them on his own by saying what he says in the film, how these songs now have new meaning for him.
Yeah.
Someone, one of the festivals, they said it's like the Torah. It takes on new meaning as you read it, like every year,
Yeah, new meaning for all of us, I think.
Yeah, he said something in the first Q&A that it's like these songs were about the spiritual struggle he was dealing with at the time, but after October 7th, it became real. Like it became real part of the Jewish struggle in a real way. I think that was a powerful line.
Would you, if you had more time available to you, and this is all done very quickly, as you're ruminating and looking back, would you have done anything differently with the film, or is there something you would have wanted to add in or move around had there been more time available to you?
Like a director's cut.
Yeah, we did move some stuff around after the first screening. We did move the scene of his mother. We moved that earlier because originally it was the soldier scene, then the hostage farm, And then it felt like, okay, now we should show that, where the advice we were given was like, bring that earlier. And the only earliest time that made sense was after the soldier scene, where it starts getting more positive, where it's like, okay, now we can show it. And then we'll show the hostage forum, which I think broke that up nicely. Otherwise, we took out a couple things that didn't need to be there. I definitely would have conducted a formal interview with him, like talking about each scene post the film and having that be like kind of an in-between segment way. It doesn't just go necessarily scene, music. It might have been more of a natural progression. I tried to do it a little bit with what I had from the podcast, but I think that would have been the main thing I would have done. And we still might do it. I'm actually planning to go to LA in a couple weeks, before this lands somewhere permanently. We might end up doing something more. We'll have to see.
Keep us posted. Well, we'll stay tuned for that one. Yeah.
We do have a question from somebody who's watching. They said, I'm curious about the list of places from which you sourced additional footage of the protest, historical, etc. How did you get all of that, and how did you coordinate it? Thank you, Terry.
The footage of the protest. What was the other ones?
The historical footage, so the Holocaust footage.
So yeah, the Holocaust footage actually was given to me by the director of the music video, because he had an assistant that was going through that content. So that's where I got that stuff. I'm not sure where he sourced it from. But the news segments were, available. The protests, there was a protest in there that was actually from a Yishai Rebo concert. The ones with the Queers for Palestine.
Yep.
I have a very talented colleague, Shimi Sokol, who shot one show in America. It was a Purim show that he did in Brooklyn. And that was the show that we used to show like context for the American shows when he was going through those news segments, explaining what it was for these fans who didn't get to experience his shows. We used that one show that we had. And I'm so grateful that I know him and he shot it and we had it. And so he filmed other protests that he had filmed concerts of. So we used that from the Yishai Rebo concert. And then there was actual footage of the protesters at his shows from the news segments. And we used some of that as well. And then, news, there's so much news about October 7th. So generally some of that came from, but one miraculous situation was that someone who reached out to me on Facebook and said, hey, I'm a convert. I recently got involved with Judaism. I'm in film. I would love to get more involved with filmmakers in Israel. He sends me some samples of what he did. And there was this beautiful, like I said, it was a video that he made for the Israeli government showing a lot of the aftermath of October 7th. And there was those really unique drone shots that you see in our film. And I was like, where is this footage from? And I'm happy to write up a licensing agreement. And so that footage came from this random person who happened to message me while I was the 2-month period. I was, I felt that was very meant to be. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the production that you're working on now?
Yeah, sure. So at the screening of the one in LA, someone came up to me and they said, I got your next project. And in LA, I thought people just say that, I don't really live in LA. Like a very like Ashkenazi Jewish looking guy with a kippah on. I'm like, all right, what's this going to be? This gentleman, you might have seen a film he made called Rock Camp, but he is formerly Ringo Starr's manager from the Beatles. A religious Jewish man named David Fishoff managed Ringo Starr for 15 years. Then after that, he started a rock and roll fantasy camp for people to be able to jam with their favorite rock stars. They join a band for a week. They spend 4 days, just one after another. Each day, a different rock star comes in themed around the 80s rock, whatever it is. He had been after October 7th, like Matisyahu, experiencing what had happened because his son also, like Matisyahu, was spending the year in Israel. So it was very relevant. And he happened to be there when there was a funeral taking place. And the woman showing him around, the mayor of those communities down south, said, hey, I'm sorry, I have to go to a funeral. And he said, whose funeral is it? And it was one of the hostages that had accidentally been killed by the IDF when they had escaped from Hamas. And it was such a tragic story. And he happened to be a metal drummer. So this guy, David, he's a metal drummer. I want to go. Can we all go? So he goes to the funeral and there's a drum set up by the grave. And the brother of the drummer is also a drummer. And he does this 10-minute emotional drum solo as a tribute to his brother. And this guy, David, is just standing there in awe. And he gets this moment of inspiration where he thinks, if I could have given this hostage, this rock and roll fantasy camp, which changes people's lives, it could have changed his life. And it heals people through music he's seen over the years. But he said, I could do it for his brother. And he has a friend, Sam Grunwald, who was a former LA consulate general, and he said, I want to find 10 survivors of October 7th. He runs an organization, Karen Yesod. So the staff of that organization, they're able to find 10 survivor musicians of the tragedy in various ways. A Nova survivor, someone who had fought off 40 terrorists with 9 guys, saved his whole kibbutz, bassist named Sagi. And he said, I want to bring them to be part of my sold out camp in LA, but I can't tell the rock stars and I can't tell the campers because he's afraid Israel, politics, protest. And he just does it. And he really humanizes Israel through these sweet, young, innocent Israeli kids. And it really like was such a beautiful experience for them. Some of them couldn't even hear music or be around loud sounds. And there they are jamming with Sebastian Bach, the drummer of Whitesnake, basses of Van Halen, and just like really healing through music. And so that became, he had filmed the camp. He wanted someone to take on the project of filming the Israelis in Israel and having Sam and David, who had done this for them, interact with them in various environments relating to their story, and then basically edit the whole thing. And so that's what I had been working on for the last few months. And now there's a very talented producer that's kind of taking it to the next stage. And it's also just like, a story about the power of music to heal post October 7th. And there's very, very famous musicians like Sebastian Bach and Slash from Guns N' Roses sends them a video, David Raymond, just to show support. And it meant so much to these guys,
Tremendous. That is tremendous for all of us, that kind of support.
Well, that healing through music, I mean, that came through in last night's film as well, when we saw the survivors and them playing with Matisyahu. So I think that project, I really look forward to seeing that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
On my flight to screening post LA was in Colorado. I was on the plane and I see one of the survivors that had opened for Matisyahu. You see when he's opening the next night, and he was on his way to open for Matisyahu in America. And I was on my way to show the film for the first time since the original opening. So yeah, felt very meant to be. I was like, wow.
These coincidences are really amazing that they just keep piling up for you with this film. That's really amazing.
Was there anyone else that had a question before we wrap
does.
things up? Tammy, did you have something you wanted to ask?
Thank you for this film, but I also feel like there's still more of a story to be told at that part of just being boycotted. And I'm sure there's other Israeli performers that have been boycotted in that whole story, because like there was a Eurovision, the story about the Israeli performer out of Eurovision, and I'm sure there's others. Have you considered that angle at all?
Well, I do have some. So Tomer Capone is a famous Israeli actor. He's in a show called The Boys on Amazon, one of my favorite shows, and he's in Fauda. And he's the one who saw him post this video on October 8th, singing the lyrics to that song Ascent. And he said, Matis, where is this song? He doesn't know him at all, but he said, I'm a big fan. Where can I find it? And he's like, I haven't released it, but here's the song. And he said, you got to come to Israel and shoot a music video for this song. So when I wanted to maybe tell the opening scene of the movie, I felt maybe we should tell that story. And so I interviewed him, and he was also explaining to me on camera, I think that, he's been penalized significantly for being an Israeli artist. That's not a bad idea. I really appreciate that, like to be able to interview other, Israelis specifically who have been, hurt by this whole situation. That wouldn't be a bad idea to focus on that. Or even for the other documentary we're working on, it would be relevant, I think. We interviewed David Rensner for that documentary, and he runs an organization, Creative Community for Peace, and his whole mission is to help artists that are dealing with this and help change the narrative about Israel and how music should be affected. The Eric Clapton and the Roger Waters who are trying to demonize Israel.
But even it's interesting because we see that on campus, of course, but we forget almost that is being experienced by artists as well. And it's different nexus of our actors who are bringing that forward. So I think there is some merit in that. I'm curious to hear where that would go. And I think there's a lot that can be learned by the general public about that. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Becky, did you have one more?
I do. Do we have time for one more?
I think we can take one more.
One more. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who didn't ask a question before I ask a second one?
Nobody's hand is up, so you're good. It's you.
Okay. I think everybody probably has their own, parts of the movie that intrigue them or connected with them the most. And one of the things that I really thought about were the backstories of all the soldiers, these young guys, the elite of the elite. Um, can you tell us a little bit more, flesh out for us some of what we didn't see that among the interactions there in those scenes?
Okay, so yeah, there is actually a scene. Someone asked actually in the first screening, what are things that we didn't include in the film? And I think we very proudly were like, we couldn't think of any. But you mentioned specifically the soldier scene. There was a scene that was originally in the first edit I made that we took out, and the scene was him, Matasiao, talking about how he never touched a gun as a kid. His parents were peace activists, and so he remembers the first time his father-in-law came in with a gun and put it on the table, and how shocking that was for him. Like, that's normal, like that's a gun. And I think it gave some context to his own like background when it comes to just war and peace, being a peace activist that he somewhat is with, the song One Day. And that scene we did take out because we just didn't need to talk about guns or violence. There was also a picture that he posted on Instagram of him holding one of the soldiers' guns. Obviously, we didn't need him holding the soldiers' guns and like that controversial. But otherwise, that was a really unique experience. Matasiao said to me, he's like, you never seen me this happy with like a group of people that were like, admiring him and being in his presence. He felt so much joy being with those soldiers and just being able to uplift them. For him, that was like, for sure, one of the happiest I've seen him. And just so you see him like dancing and like they're singing the bat mitzvah and bar mitzvah, Yahoo. I mean, that was just, there was a lot more to that, I guess. You're right, that like he was just so grateful to be able to do that. And he tries to describe it like mini speech you see in the film, but yeah, that was very unique. And you see, and you do see so many hugs and so many embraces.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the cigars and the beers, like, these guys, this is stress, the experiences they have, I can't even imagine. I can't relate, as a Canadian and, who's never lived in a war zone. And they were clearly blowing off a lot of steam.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It was the Leonard Cohen moment.
Sorry, what'd you say?
It was a Leonard Cohen moment of our time.
Yeah, I was so grateful that I thought to like ask two of them, like, hey, can you talk about this? Because it was beautiful to hear them describe what it meant for them,
Mhm. Absolutely. Terry had a final note, which was a thank you for making the film. Absolutely agreed, Terry. It's always so hard to make a documentary, and so glad to see you being brave and telling such a powerful story in an artful way. I couldn't have said that better myself, Terry, so thank you for that. Shlomo, thank you. You really have given us a much deeper understanding, both of the film and the making of the film, of course. Before we let you go, is there a message you'd like to leave us with?
I think, well, in the speech I made in Grand Rapids the other week, I talked about how I had recently found an autobiography that I wrote in college before I knew I wanted to go into film. And I said, I pray that God will help me find a career path that combines all my talents to be able to, make people happy and connect people to God and help the Jewish people. And I just truly feel like if you do the right thing in the right moments you're being presented with, and you do right by the situation, then God will help you find that perfect career. And I really believe this film is such a true manifestation of that 22-year-old prayer. And so I'm just so grateful that I was able to be a part of it, and that you guys were able to believe in it enough to show it. And it means a lot to me. Every one of these Q&As or every one of these conversations I'm able to have means so much to me, especially from talking to people from outside of Israel who haven't been able to be as connected to the story. So thank you guys so much. And I guess that's the message I guess I'll end with.
Shlomo, you were such an inspiration. It was an honor to be able to show the film and to be able to have this discussion with you. So thank you. And you truly found your calling, and you're truly serving God with what you do.
Thank you so much. It
Thank
means so
you.
much.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Shlomo.
really.
Thanks, everybody, for coming out today.
Thank you, everyone.